Okay, it's game time. Hasta luego. Feast on this!
What up, it's Shakespeare94, and welcome to my remastered weapon review of Resident Evil 0. Now, before I say anything further, I'm gonna go ahead and place a time code here on the screen for you impatient ones that don't give a damn about my channel history and weapon review schematics, because that's what I plan on talking about before I begin the actual showcase. So follow this time code to skip straight to it, but be warned, my awesome voice doesn't go away. Alright, so as you may have gathered from the title and the first sentence I spoke, and if you're a longtime fan or viewer, then you know that this is a remaster of an earlier weapon review I had for Resident Evil 0. That earlier review, now that this is uploaded, is no longer on my main channel and is stored on my TGS Classics channel alongside an original weapon review I made years ago. That being said, this is my third showing of these weapons in my YouTube content history, and like I said in the remake remastered weapon review, will be the current standing until a 4K 60 frame per second version gets released, which is probably inevitable. So since I've long completed original weapon reviews of the entire Resident Evil franchise, I only do them nowadays when I either complete a full play of a game and the original weapon review could use a visual upgrade, or when a brand new game in the series gets released. As of this video's upload date, I'm sure everyone's looking forward to Resident Evil 2 Remake, because that's the newest game in the series as of this moment. But anyway, since I rarely do weapon reviews now, I'm going to walk you guys through my weapon review routine. This is good for newcomers to the channel if they care to stay up to this point and didn't use the time code I provided earlier, and for longtime viewers who would like to see some weapon review flashbacks, because I like to show past games to demonstrate these steps that build up my showcases. So to prepare for the showcase, I break the weapons into categories. Example, non-firearms, handguns, magnums, explosives, etc. I usually always start with the knives and throwing weapons. For this game specifically, I'll start with the knife and a nice incendiary weapon that I'll reveal when we get to the showcase. Then I'll proceed to the actual firearms, starting with the pistols, onto submachine guns, shotguns, magnums, and finally explosive weaponry. This game being one of the last classic Resident Evil games, there's still not too wide of an array of weapon classes. For each individual weapon, my first step is to introduce it in the inventory menu and then read its in-game description. If there's anything special about the weapon that I feel like emphasizing on, I will do it right then and there. Secondly, I will reveal the location of the weapon or how to unlock it if it's special in that way. This is actually the newest task that I've added to my weapon reviews. Third step, test firing and reloading the weapon in a safe place free of nearby enemies. Probably the easiest part of the review for me. If possible, I like to do it in well-lit areas with close-up angles if it's fixed like this game. Fourth step, I announce which enemy I desire to test the weapon on, and most of the time I'll use that same enemy for the rest of the weapons within the category. Example, all handguns will be tested on zombies. Then comes the fifth step, testing the weapon on the enemy, my favorite part of the review personally, especially with overpowered weapons. The final step is the result of the enemy test and comparing to earlier tests with other weapons of the category if there were any, as well as sharing any final thoughts on the current weapon. So now you know the layout of my weapon review, so without further ado, let's dive into this weapon showcase. Alright, to start off this weapon review, we're going to start with the non-firearms as usual. And the first one is the knife. A knife designed for self-defense. Alrighty, get a good look at it. Zoom in as much as possible. There we go. Alrighty. So the knife is in Billy's inventory from the get-go. However, you can acquire a secondary knife on the train in this specific room. Alrighty, let's go ahead and test it out. Alright, so typical usage of a knife between male and female. The animations are exactly the same from Resident Evil Remake. No surprise there. Same exact engine, basically. Alright, so let's go ahead and test the knife on the most basic enemy of the Resident Evil franchise, the classic zombie. Alright, luckily I found a cheap trick to use to where I could easily keep track of how many slashes and just constantly cut away at him. So that took 17 slashes. So it also took 17 slashes for Rebecca. So the characters are no different from each other upon the damage of the knife. However, their usage is obviously different. Rebecca slashes in a vertical motion while Billy does a horizontal motion, but it doesn't seem to cause any damage difference. So there you go. Of course, I'm not a knife user, so me personally, I don't care to use the knife. I get rid of it as soon as I can. It's just a space waster for me. But for starters, I guess it is a good way to finish enemies off. If you knock them down first with like a firearm, you can try to finish them off with the knife if you want to reserve some ammo, but that's a huge time consumer too, so you gotta think about it. Depends on your motives for this game. Alright, well that is gonna be it for the knife. Now for this game's one and only throwing weapon, the Molotov Cocktail. A rather primitive weapon capable of dealing massive damage to certain types of enemies. So it's cluing you in there that this is really designed for a very specific enemy in this game. It is designed for the mimicry Marcuses that you see around the game, also known as the Leechmen. It's very useful against those. So get a good look at it here. Let's zoom all the way in. And then, there you go. Alright, so the Molotov Cocktail is a created weapon through the combination of gasoline and an empty bottle. And you can find those items scattered throughout the game and give you plenty of these things. So let's go ahead and test out the Molotov Cocktail. Alright, so yep, an incendiary product will lay out some flames upon your enemies. So let's go ahead and test it on the most proper enemy for it, the Mimicry Marcus. Alright, so it took a total of 3 Molotov cocktails to take down the Mimicry Marcus. That is the average. I don't know if it ever takes more or less, to be honest. It's never happened in my experience. An average of 3 shots to take down the Mimicry Marcus with a Molotov cocktail. Now, one thing I don't think I mentioned, Rebecca handles Molotov cocktails better than Billy does. And as you'll see throughout the rest of this review, it's the only weapon that she handles better than Billy does. Alrighty, that is going to conclude the Molotov cocktail. Alright, time to see some actual firepower with firearms. I'm going to start with the pistols, and the first one is a handgun. More specifically, it's Rebecca's handgun. The standard equipment for STARS officers. It uses 9mm parabellum rounds. Alright, get a good look at it. STARS. Yes. Nice. Alrighty. So Rebecca starts straight off with this gun in her inventory. Already equipped, actually, so it's available to you at the very start of the game. And Billy could use it as well. So let's go ahead and test it out. Here's a nice close-up of the handgun, since Billy can hold it up and I can get him close to the camera using the partner move. Alright, your average variety handgun. So let's go ahead and test Rebecca's handgun on a zombie. Alright, so for both characters, Rebecca's handgun took 8 shots. So I can't really average that out. However, it does take different amount of shots throughout the game overall. So you can use my classic formula, add or subtract 5 to that amount. So it could take as little as 3 shots. Well, actually technically it can take as little as 1 shot because these handguns have critical headshot capabilities. So, let's say this, it could take as little as 1 shot, and it could take as much as probably 13 shots for a zombie. Alright, that's going to conclude Rebecca's handgun. Alright, now for the next weapon, another handgun. This one is better referred to as Billy's handgun. A standard army issue handgun. It uses 9mm power barrel rounds. Alright, so clear difference between this and Rebecca's handgun. Rebecca's handgun was a Beretta 92, while this is looking more like a Colt 1911. Yep, there you go. Alright. So, just like Rebecca's handgun, Billy starts straight off with this handgun. He probably acquired it over his escape from his van, but we never see that actual event. So let's go ahead and test out this handgun. Before we start, of course, here's a nice close-up view of it with Billy up close in game. Here we go. Alright, so one clear difference I could see between Billy and Rebecca when it comes to firing handguns is, obviously Billy is a much better marksman than Rebecca. He fires the handgun a tad bit faster than Rebecca does, and has a more stable firing stance. Rebecca's definitely not a marksman of any sort, but she can handle a weapon. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and test Billy's handgun on a zombie. Alright, well that just proves what I said earlier, that it could vary from zombie to zombie. What's peculiar is it took 10 shots for Billy with his own handgun, but only 8 shots for Rebecca. So again, I don't know if the damage is different between each character, but I do believe that Billy has a better critical rate with his own handgun than Rebecca does, and Rebecca has a better critical rate with her own handgun than Billy does. That is where which character using which handgun matters, is for the critical rate. Other than that, I don't think the damage rate is different between them. Alrighty, so that is going to conclude Billy's handgun. Alright, so at some point in the middle of the game, you'll come across a locker that contains a briefcase that contains these handgun parts. Now these can only be combined with one of the 2 handguns in the game. So you acquire the handgun parts in this locker here. Now this locker requires a key, which is located in this room with a waterfall and 2 plague crawlers. You could either bypass them and just grab the key that's on top of the box, or defeat them, however you want. But once you have the key, you can unlock the locker and get this duralumin case, and then you unlock it through the code that's on the side, and then you get the handgun parts. I will show you guys both handguns with it customized. So starting with Rebecca's handgun, combine this here, you now have the custom handgun. A custom handgun that's been fitted with a scope for greater accuracy. These modifications should make it easier to hit a target's weak point. By that it means the critical the critical point. So, you can get a close-up view of it. There's the scope, etc. Alright, so let's go ahead and test it out now that it's customized. Here's a nice close-up of it that only Billy can provide. Alright, Billy really fires that thing fast. Probably because it's a very simple pistol for him, unlike the 1911. I don't know. But anyway, now let's test Rebecca's custom handgun on zombie, see if the firepower is any different. Alright, so for Rebecca, with her custom handgun, it took 7 shots, while Billy, using the same gun, took 8 shots. So, yep, the averages are adding up. It's between 5 and, like, 10 shots, more or less. I didn't get the critical like I wanted yet. If anything, I could just show stock footage of a critical headshot happening with both of the custom handguns, because I'm pretty sure I've achieved it somewhere. But anyway, that is going to conclude Rebecca's custom handgun. So I realized I didn't really examine the parts. A set of various parts consisting of a scope and a scope mount. Equipping these on a handgun will greatly increase the gun's firing precision. Alright, so there you go. Alright, so we saw Rebecca's handgun customized, so now let's go ahead and do it to Billy's handgun. A custom handgun that's been fitted with a scope for greater accuracy. These modifications should make it easier to hit a target's repoint. So the description is exactly the same. Doesn't matter which handgun you do it to. So, yeah. Alright, so first here's a nice close-up of it with Billy. Alrighty, now let's test it out. Alrighty, so nothing much else to say really. Let's go ahead and test this on a zombie now. Alright, so that took a total of 7 shots for both characters, and I still couldn't achieve the critical rate. So yeah, I'm gonna have to just use stock footage that I'll show right now as I'm speaking of critical headshots happening with the handguns. It is completely random, and there's probably a % chance of some sort, but yeah, when it happens, it is spectacular, and it saves a lot of ammo. Alright, well that is gonna conclude Billy's custom handgun, as well as all handguns. Now for the next weapon, the one and only submachine gun in this game. A small submachine gun. It uses its own type of ammo magazine. Alright. Alright, so examine it. Definitely looks like a Heckler type weapon. Alright, submachine gun ammo. Now, the submachine gun is an unlockable weapon. You unlock the submachine gun by achieving an A rank, and at least normal mode. Easy mode will not give you unlockables, as far as I know. And to get an A rank, you need to beat the game under 5 hours. And then you can unlock ammunition for it in the main game by getting an E rank in Leech Hunter, which is collecting 0 to 29 leeches. Alright, once you have it unlocked, it's automatically in Billy's inventory at the start of the game. This weapon being held at waist level, I can't really get a nice close-up like with Billy. So we're just gonna have to do with it in this form. Alright, so let's go ahead and test it out. So, rapid fire weapon. What more could you ask for? Alright, so let's go ahead and test this on a zombie as well and compare it to the firepower of handgun bullets. Alright, of course, no one's gonna fire very precisely like that. You should spam just a little bit before you start doing that. But anyway, Rebecca only took 16 submachine gun bullets, or about roughly 5%, because just like most Resident Evil games, 3 bullets equals 1%. So yeah, took her 16 bullets, or roughly 5%. Billy's took 19 bullets, so roughly 6%. Alright, submachine gun is a pretty badass weapon since it's spam fire and you could aim left and right while firing it. So it becomes a really good weapon to use, like in crowds and whatnot. Alrighty, well that is going to conclude the one and only submachine gun.
What happened?